This is where we left off in the Amida Sutra, where the Buddha was talking about all who are reborn in the Sukhavati, Jila Sijie, cực lạc thế giới, will be non-retrogressed from the supreme and perfect enlightenment, Bố Thầy Doan, right? Bác Thói Chuyện. So that's one of perhaps the greatest benefits of being in Sukhavati, Jila Sijie, is that we will never fall back, we will never slide back within the realm of the samsara, which is the cycle of life and death, 生死轮回. Okay. Last time we talked about the different aspect of non-regressions or non-retrogressions. There are many terms in English for 不退转, 不退转. You can either have non-regressions, non-retro progressions, or irreversibility. You cannot reverse. So different terms, but they all mean the same thing. So what we left off was we looked at different aspects from the Hinayana, 小乘, and Mahayana, 大乘, 佛教. And they have different ways of looking at this irreversibility. And I thought that we do a little bit of review to understand the differences between the two, because there seems to be a lot of confusion between the two, or at least misunderstanding between Hinayana and Mahayana, right? 小乘 and 大乘. People often believe that with Hinayana, 小乘, tiểu thừa, is that the focus is simply just on oneself and not caring about others. So just worrying about attaining our own enlightenment and ignoring completely the needs of others. So that's one popular belief, which is not entirely correct. The other belief for Mahayana, 大乘, 大thừa, is that one should forget about oneself and just devote all your energy in helping others. So that's another extreme, and which is not completely correct, because the assessment is very crude and misleading, especially with Mahayana, because it gives the impressions that one is the impressions of, he called it transcendental politeness, meaning that the door is open to you. All you have to do is just hop onto this boat of compassion, and everything will be taken care of for you. You don't have to do anything. So that is misleading, even though it's the Mahayana great boat, but we still have to put in the effort. And it's not that bodhisattvas just devote themselves to us and we don't have to do anything, right? That's a misunderstanding. But rather, the more appropriate understanding is the integration of ourselves and others. For Mahayana, there is concern for the welfare and spiritual development of other people, and that is part of our own spiritual development. So it's not about forgetting ourselves and worry about others, or forget about others and just worry about ourselves, but really the two have to go together, and you cannot separate the two, because when you make progress, you are influencing other people, and other people will influence you as well. And so the two cannot be completely separated. It's not that simple that you can just separate the two. But at the end, if we are only concerned about ourselves, then it is very self-defeating in the long run, because we're not going to make any progress if we're just only worrying about ourselves, right? And the Hinayana and Mahayana are both stages in the development. They are, in a way, part of that development process. And you cannot really distinguish between the two like cleanly, that this is Mahayana, this is Hinayana. They are integrated, and we need to be realistic, and we need to be idealistic as well, right? So at the same time, even though we cannot completely distinguish between the two, but we should understand there are differences in terms of attitude between the two. For example, let's just take an illustration to make this easy to understand. So for example, that there's some sort of a famine somewhere that people don't have enough food to eat and they're very hungry, just like this picture here, right? They are in this terrible suffering. But in this town, there are two men or two persons, one's old and one's young, and they have an enormous amount of food to feed everybody. The old man puts a notice on his place, his house, if you will, and he says that everybody's welcome to come and take the food, but you need to follow certain rules. And here are all the rules, a long list of rules. You have to bring your dish, right, your receptacles in it with a certain material, made of certain material, be in certain size. You have to hold it in a certain way in order to get the food. Right, so it's a long list, and sometimes it's written in words that you don't understand. So you don't know what is expected to receive this food. Sometimes it can be confusing, but there is a long list of criteria in order to get the food. And when asked, well, why make it so complicated for people to receive food? And people have to come to your place to get food. Well, the old man says, well, that's how it's been in my tradition, my culture. Back then my grandfather was doing it this way, I'm doing this way, so who am I to change? So here's still the list. If you want food, you got to follow the list. So that's the man's perspective, the old man's perspective. And for some people, it is much less troublesome just to starve than to go through this long list of criteria in order to get the food, because it's so complicated. On the other hand, we have the young man. The young man, he's very active. He's not waiting for people to come to his house, but he's going out there. He's carrying his own sacks of rice, foods to give to everybody. And whoever needs it, he gives the food to them. And as long as he's finished with one bag of rice or food, he runs back to his house to get some more and to continue to pass on to other people. And he doesn't care. As long as people are not starving, he doesn't care. He'll continue to give out food. And some people will criticize him, saying that he's just a busybody, just running here, running there, just to give food. And sometimes it's wasteful because people take more than they need, and sometimes they don't even need it, but they take more than they need. But he's being wasteful. That's what other people are criticizing of him. But the young man doesn't care. All he has in his mind is, as long as people are not starving, that's okay, even if he has to waste food, right? So that's his perspective. And so as one day the young man passes the old man's house, the old man is there sitting, relaxing on his front porch, smoking, because the time of passing food has not come yet. And he asked the young man, hey, take it easy. Why are you running hastily back and forth? And then the old man says, well, just let them come to you. The young man says, no, I cannot let them come to them because they need me. They cannot walk, they cannot come to me, so I have to come to them. And so the young man says that they're too weak to come to me. I have to go to them. That's how I want to do this. That's how I want to help people. And the old man says, well, that's too bad. If they really want it, they should have made the effort back then. They should have thought about it when they were young and stronger. And you shouldn't worry too much about it. But the young man did not listen. He continues to go out to help other people. So of course, the moral of the story here is that the old man representing Hinayana, young man represents Mahayana, attitude. And the famine here is, of course, the human predicament, right? The greatest human predicament is the cycle of life and death, 生死轮回, right? And of course, the people in the town represent all sentient beings, and the grain or the food that the two men passing out are the Dhamma, right? The teaching of the Buddha. So both, we cannot say that Hinayana doesn't help people. They help people, but they help with a lot of conditions. Even in today's traditions with Hinayana, 小乘, if you want to study the Dharma, you have to become a monk. You have to go into the monastery to become a monk. they put very little importance on being a lay person. You have to become a monk if you truly want to study the Dharma. Whereas Mahayana doesn't impose any such conditions. They make the Dharmas available to everybody. Whereas in Hinayana, you follow the rules and you don't change the rules. But Hinayana is a little bit more, Mahayana is a little bit more open-minded, and they change according to people's and according to situations. So it's, when we speak about Hinayana and Mahayana, 小乘 and 大乘, we are talking about attitude and not school, right? People who are out there going, helping people, you cannot say them they are Hinayana, even though they may wear robes of the southern traditions, 南传, right? 南传, 南传佛教. Even though they wear the robes of the southern tradition, but doesn't mean that they are Hinayananistic. They think about other people. And even if Mahayana, they may study Mahayana texts, they may be from the north, but their view is very selfish, self-centered. They don't want to help anybody. They only want to focus on their own liberation, or they want to migrate to the Western Pure Land for their own sake and leaving everybody else behind suffering. Sorry, that is not Mahayana perspective, right? So we cannot label anybody, but it's more of an attitude. When we say Hinayana or Mahayana, it's more of an attitude and not a school. We don't label them and put them belong to a certain school because they wear a certain way or they study the certain text, for example. Right? So, but Theravada and Mahayana, they both have their own ways of achieving non-progression, the state of non-progression. Like last time we talked about, for Theravada is a school. Hinayana is an attitude. Does it make sense? Right? It's clear, right? Hinayana is 小乘, is an attitude. Hinayana is an attitude, not a school. But Theravada is a school, if you will. Okay. So they also have a way of achieving non-regression, and that is called the stream entry. The stream entry is like 出果, right? 舍果, where they enter the stream and they don't fall back. That's their point of no return. And if you would compare it to Mahayana, then they are 1 to 6 bhumis, 地位, pusa, the 10 on a scale of 10 levels. They are from 1 to 6. If you want to correlate between Theravada, Hinayana, and Mahayana. Anything above 6, like 7, 8, 9, 10, belong to Mahayana. And that's called a state of non-regression. That's for them, that's like 不退转菩萨, right? 7 to 10. And of course, the state of non-regression, the point of no return is very important because there is a danger of falling back if we don't achieve that point, meaning that even if you are a very good Buddhist, you follow the rules, you're very diligent, you practice every day, but you can be wrong because you're so attached to the practice that you don't think what you're doing. You're just mechanical. You go to Dhamma assembly, 法会, every week, but you don't know why you're doing it. You just follow the crowd. So you're very diligent, but you can fall back because there's no firm foundation of what you're doing, right? So that attachment is where you have the rules to become ends of themselves and not a means to the end. For Mahayana, the point of no return is the 7th to 10. And for Theravada, the point of no return is stream entry, right? Okay, so you're clear in that distinction, right? If you are a bodhisattva, you have already passed the point of no return of the stream entry. So for bodhisattva, they have already passed this stream entry, the point of the point of no return already for stream entry, but there is still a danger of falling back, and that is falling back to this personal emancipation, personal liberation, right? They don't want to help other people because it's so difficult to help other people, so they fall back to say, hey, I'm happy where I am. I don't need to really go out. I can just, if they want to come to me, fine, I'll help them, but I won't go to them because it's so difficult to help difficult people. So that's the thinking. That's when we fall back. When we become a bodhisattva and we fall back to this Hinayana point of view, of attitude, right? And sometimes we encounter that. Sometimes it's very discouraging to help people, and so all we can say, is forget it. I'm on my own. They're on their own, right? So that's when we know that we have fallen back to this Hinayana attitude. So only when we get to this like 7, 8, 9, 10, can we truly call ourselves irreversible bodhisattva, 不退转菩萨, like truly irreversible. But then up until that point, there is still a danger of not falling back from the spiritual life, meaning you continue to become Buddhist, very excellent Buddhist. You become an excellent practitioner, but there is a danger of falling back into spiritual individualism, to worry about yourself and not caring about others, right? So the danger is that you give up becoming enlightenment before for the sake of all sentient beings. Yeah.
So can they fall back to 人道, 阿修罗道,
Okay.
天道?
Yeah. So
can they fall back to the six?
Okay. So the question was, can they, once they become a bodhisattva, right? 不退转菩萨, irreversible bodhisattva, right?
No. Before that, 1 to 6.
Okay. Okay, for 1 to 6, once you have entered the stream entry, which is this one right here, they cannot fall back. They fall back to the lower 3 realms, 三恶道. They can become human again. Yeah. To human, yeah, and then go back to heaven. So they'll fall back between human and heaven, according to this traditions, 7 times. And then they will progress. So they'll go back to heaven, go to heaven, and then go back to human 7 times, according to traditions. Yeah, but they won't fall back to become like hungry ghosts or in the hell realms or animal, because they see very clearly. They will avoid mistakes, but they may not necessarily help other people to avoid mistakes. But they themselves will never make mistakes to fall back into the lower 3 realms. Does it make sense? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, good question. But for bodhisattvas, they will never fall back to 3 realms of, not all, but for Xiaocheng, Hinayana, they get stuck in individual liberation. And bodhisattva can fall back too to individual liberation if they don't get to 7, 七地 Pusa and up, right? 7 bhumis. Okay. So if you take it seriously, the bodhisattva ideal, which is Pusa Dao, Bồ-Tát Dao, it's very challenging to have this compassion towards all sentient beings, because people can be very trying, foolish, weak, and misguided. They don't listen to you. They fight back. After you treat them nice, they may come back and say, "Why do you treat me so nice? You hurt me." Then you say, "All right, fine, whatever. You do whatever you want." Then we know that we are falling back. But of course, we do want to give them space. But in our heart, we wish that we will have another opportunity to help them. We'll continue to be in the background. We will not be in the face all the time to try to shove help down the throat, right? But we'll give them space to grow, and if they need help, we always jump in to help them. But we always are always there to help them, right? But it is very difficult. Like if you have somebody who you helped for 10 years, 20 years, and then at the end they turn back and they bite you. They say that you hurt me, or you damaged me. Like, what? I've been helping you all this time, and this is how you repay your gratitude is to yell back at me and to blame me. So then it can be very disappointing, right? But as a bodhisattva, we don't give up. We say, okay, maybe there's misunderstanding. We'll find other ways to help them. We don't give up, right? So even the bodhisattvas of the path, right up to the eighth bhumi, which is immovable, 不动地菩萨, 不动địa, may be tempted sometimes to give up on people in despair, right? By saying, oh, I can't do anything with them. Let them do what they like. So there's a danger of falling back if we don't get to the eighth bhumi. Okay. But realistically, I mean, when we start this journey to enlightenment, we will regress and progress. We sometimes will give up because we have limited abilities, and we will say, this is too hard. And it's okay to be saying that. It's okay to regress one step. But we have to make the effort to progress 2 steps, right? You can fall back 1 step, and that's fine. But the next time that you progress, you have to make an effort to progress 2 steps so that you don't fall back. And that's why we have to remind ourselves. All right? Deep in our heart, we want to progress, and we want to make things better for them. But we don't give up on them. Sometimes we have to say, okay, fine, you do what you like. But the next time that we have an opportunity to help them, we should make up for what we have missed. Does it make sense? Right? So it's okay to fall back because we cannot be perfect all the time. In our heart, we want to be bodhisattvas, but we're not. We're human beings. We're still mundane beings. 凡夫, right? 凡夫. So we will fall back, and that's okay. But we have to remind ourselves that the next time that we make progress, that we will be 2 steps. So 1 step ahead of where we have fallen off, right? Okay. So that's realistic, right? We have to be realistic about ourselves. This is very ideal. Of course, we want a very high goals to pursue. We don't want to set the bar too low. So that we can achieve easily. We want to set the bar really high, knowing that we will miss the bar. But that's okay because at least you're trying, you're getting closer and not further away, right? So having given up to the goal of universal enlightenment, one may even achieve individual emancipation, 解脱, right? 解脱, even nirvana. But in relation to one's original goal, that would represent falling away, a failure. Meaning that if we have taken the bodhisattva vow, right, this path of bodhisattva ideal, 菩萨道, 不达道, and we fall back into this individual liberation, then we know it's a failure. So you can see how difficult it is. It is extremely difficult. So for bodhisattvas, one could say nirvana is a failure. If we just want to have our own place of happiness, to enter nirvana and not have to deal with all conditions, then it is a failure. Even though we may be happy, we may be liberated, 解脱, right, 解脱, but it's a failure from the bodhisattva's perspective, right? So you can see how high the ideal is. It's very demanding, right? So that's why we have to be prepared. We have to be prepared mentally and have the courage to say, I would not give up, right? Whatever happens, I will not give up because I have set myself a very high standard. I'm going to try my best to shoot for it, right? So nirvana here, to achieve nirvana, sometimes nirvana is defined as a state of absence of greed, anger, delusion. But we should not see nirvana as some personal emancipation, just our own little liberation. But we should have a greater view of nirvana, and that is non-dualistic view. 不二法门, non-dualistic. That is, we're helping sentient beings while residing in non-dwelling nirvana. 不住涅槃. Right? You don't dwell in that nirvana, but you're here helping people, working with people side by side, but you are in nirvana at the same time. Does it make sense? Meaning that they don't influence you to make you regress, to make you feel unhappy. You work with them, they may be unhappy, but that doesn't make you less happy. They may be happy, but it doesn't make you even more happy because you have control. So that's 无住 Nibbana is your work, non-dwelling nirvana is that you work with people side to side, but you don't get impacted negatively or positively because you're already positive, you're already full. So there's no making you fuller or less full, right? So how does the Bodhisattva become irreversible? How do we achieve this state of irreversibility? 不退转, how do we achieve this? Well, one is that to understand, to have this realizations of great emptiness, right? 大空, 大空. To have this unconditioned, to have this realization of unconditioned, 不二法, right? 法不二, meaning there's no differentiation. I mean, there's no me achieving emancipation and other people not achieving their liberation. There's no duality. When one goes deeply into the conditions, one encounters the unconditioned. When one deeply goes into the unconditioned, one encounters condition. Of course, we should understand that when you go from condition to unconditioned, that's progress. But here it says when you go from when you go from non-conditioned to condition, it doesn't mean regression. 退转, doesn't mean that you fall back. But what we should understand here is that when you go from conditioned to unconditioned, that's enlightenment. But going from the other way, unconditioned to conditioned, it is because of compassion. We go back to this world to help people, the conditioned environment. The condition here is 缘起, 缘起. We enter the conditioned environment not because of falling back, but because of compassion, 慈悲, 德悲, right? Because of our compassion that we enter the condition. Does it make sense? Right? So it's not falling back. Spiritual individualism is based on dualistic thinking, meaning there's a differentiation between you and me. You and me, there's this distinction. That's dualistic thinking. Dualistic thinking is that there is nirvana, and this is not nirvana. And the idea that there is unconditioned, the dualist thinking is that there's something out there that we can achieve. That's dualistic thinking. Does it make sense? Right? There's a differentiation between out there somewhere and here somewhere. And because of that, you aspires as a kind of escape from the condition. It motivates us to achieve to move away from the condition. And when you realize the great emptiness, you see that conditioned and unconditioned are really the same. There's no here, there's no there. There's no going and coming. When you have unconditioned, non-dualistic view. Does it make sense? 不二法门, right? 不二法門. When you don't have this dualistic thinking, there's no here, there's no there, right? But we should understand this clearly. It doesn't mean that we just close our eyes and don't think of the differences and don't understand the differences. Non-dualistic thinking doesn't mean that there's no understanding. There is. At the beginning, we need to have a clear understanding that there is here and there is there. There is samsara and there is sukhavati. So at the beginning, we need to understand clearly that between the two, the good and the bad of the two, right? So because initially, without a clear understanding that there is better than here, sukhavati is better than samsara, then there is no motivation. If we don't see the superiority of sukhavati, 极乐世界, then we are not motivated to go there because what's there? If it's not better than here, then why go there, right? So we first have to understand that that place really is a Buddha land and that it is better than this place. We have to recognize the fact, right? Does it make sense? We have to recognize the fact. Otherwise, it will be very difficult to have this motivation, this aspiration to want to go there. All right, so the first thing. And then next is to understand that our only option because we have this motivation that our only option and truly want to help sentient beings is to quickly attain enlightenment for all sentient beings. That's why we are motivated to go there. We know that's a good place to be, and we want to be there because it can help us to quickly gain enlightenment, not for ourselves, but for the sake of all sentient beings. So the non-dualistic thinking here is that while we're still here in the samsara, we're not there yet. We cannot abandon here. We still have the responsibility of being here. As long as we are a member of our society, we have the responsibility to be, to be part of that society, to make it better. We have that responsibility. So we don't try to escape our responsibility, but we try our best to make this place a better place, right? And then when we are in Sukhavati, then of course we can now traverse the entire universe. We go throughout the entire universe to help all sentient beings. And so at the end, ultimately, there is no going or staying. There's no here or there because we are everywhere. Because once we have achieved that, whether we are in the samsara helping, there's no going or coming because we are not going to fall back, right? Does it make sense? There's no differentiation anymore. There's no dualistic thinking. Does it make sense? Right? Deciding whether to go by yourself with others, to come back or to stay here is a game, it's a dream. We want to go there, leave here to go there. It's a dream, it's a make-believe. But when you wake up from your dream of dualistic thinking, then you will realize that there is no going or coming. And that its ultimate depth of the conditioned is the unconditioned. Because in other words, if we are not happy with who we are, we don't know what we want, even if we are in Sukhavati, we will still not know who we are and what we want. Because we are not willing to help ourselves. So it doesn't matter if we are not willing to help ourselves and we have help coming, it's not going to help. But if we have just a little bit of aspiration, a little bit wanting to help ourselves, then the environment, a suitable environment will be very helpful. Sukhavati will be extremely helpful. Does it make sense? All right. So we first have to recognize that, yes, there is a difference between here and there, but the difference is really in our mind. And the difference is to motivate us to achieve something greater and not to escape here. Does it make sense? So in the depth of condition is unconditioned is that if we can accept our current situations, then it is on principle, it is Sukhavati, Jila Sijie. Right? So Mr. Chan's, right, Huizang, he says we should do what we need to do and accept what we need to accept. So when you're willing to accept, when you do what you need to do, then there's no need to try to escape. You're already here. You know what I'm saying? Or you're already there. Does it make sense? All right. So we need to at least want to help ourselves, want to achieve, at least a thought of wanting to achieve enlightenment for all sentient beings. Then Jila Sijie, then Sukhavati will be extremely helpful to us. And there's no here and there because if you look at the Heart Sutra, Sinjing Tamkin, it says that Rupa is Sunyata, Sunyata is Rupa, form is emptiness. Rupa is form, Sunyata is emptiness. Form is emptiness and emptiness is form. So there's nothing to escape from and nowhere to escape to. That's on principle. On principle, Li perspective, right? From Li, 角度来说, Li, from the principle perspective, there's no difference. But from the realistic perspective, there is a difference. And you also see the utter absurdity of the very idea of individual emancipation, because there's no me, there's no you, therefore there's no individual emancipation. It is this realization that makes Bodhisattva irreversible. Does it make sense? That's how Bodhisattva can achieve irreversibility, is because they have achieved this concept of sunyata, of kong, the concept of emptiness, of sunyata. And he or she cannot fall back to individual emancipation because there is no individual emancipation to fall back to, right? There's no going because there's nothing there. There's not coming because we already here. There's no going because there's really nothing there, right? So what does this mean to Pure Land practitioners like us? While our immediate goal is to migrate to Sukhavati for the sake of all sentient beings, but at the same time, we should try our best to make this a better place, right? Turn this place into Sukhavati, and not have to wait until we die to go to Sukhavati, but try our best to make this place Sukhavati. And the most meaningful things in life is to be able to help others. So like Mr. Chen Huizang, he said, right, why do we want to go to Sukhavati? Well, it is because we want the ability to help people. That's where the value of life is. The value of existence is to help others, right? To make things better. That's the value of existence. And of course, if we waver and if we don't go to Sukhavati, then we are not living up to the value that we deserve, meaning that we won't be able to truly help others because we don't have the abilities. But if we have the abilities, then we definitely will live up to our value and we can be very valuable. When you want to help people, you have to be valuable. If you want to be valuable, the best thing is to migrate to Sukhavati, because that's the best way to achieve our utmost potential. So for the majority of us, migrating to Sukhavati is the safest, the surest, the most direct way to achieve Buddhahood. We cannot say about other people. They may have other ways of achieving Buddhahood. But for us, for Pure Land practitioners, if we want to achieve Buddhahood, this is the surest way. And the most meaningful aspiration is migration to Sukhavati. Right? That's why we want to migrate to Sukhavati. It's because we want to achieve our utmost potential, the fastest, the surest way without falling. In this world, it's not very reliable because the higher you go, even if you are propagating the Dhamma, 弘法利生, 广法来生, even if you are propagating the Dhamma and you're very popular, there is danger, right? There's danger waiting. There's no guarantee that you will not make mistakes because we have not achieved the state of no return, the point of no return. Does it make sense? So fame, fortune can always trick us because we have not achieved the state of no return. That's why the most meaningful things for us is to migrate to Sukhavati for that reason, is to avoid fooling ourselves and avoid hurting other people, misleading other people, right? So how do we know that we have achieved this irreversibility? Well, if you have to ask whether you are irreversible or not, then you are not. All right. So if you are asked and why you do things, if you have the perspective of other people, you put other people first, then you are more resonating with that irreversibility because that's the mindset of a bodhisattva. Irreversible bodhisattvas is they tend to think about other people first, right? What can they do to help other people? So that's a sign, or you may have dreams about sacrificing your life to save others, or having your head cut off and feeling quite happy about it. And so you know, if you have those streams, then you know that you are on the path to irreversibility. um, okay, so how do we not fall back, or why do people fall back? Well, it's mainly is in our mind. It has to do with our mind and how we see things. Bodhisattvas, they don't fall back because they can continue to progress. Other people fall back because they have reached the point, their plateau, and they don't continue to fall back. And especially if they don't reach the point of no return, the point of no return is there's so much momentum that they'll continue to go. They cannot fall back. Just like if we want to go out into space, we have to require a lot of the speed or velocity is like really great in order to shoot out, to escape the pull, the gravitational pull. Even if you go out to the edge of our Earth, our atmosphere, if you don't pass that point, you still can fall back, right? So you may go very high, you may achieve a lot, but if you have not achieved the state of irreversibility, you can still fall back. But for bodhisattvas, they have achieved that. And the reasons that they don't fall back because they understand the concept of void, just what we talked about, because there's nothing to fall back to. The reason that we fall back because there's still desire. We want to acquire it, and that's why we want to fall back to acquire it. Does it make sense? For bodhisattva, they see it's empty. There's no like wu wo. There's no self. There is nothing to be attached to. Right? So until we reach that level of wisdom, it's very difficult to escape that, because it's always so tempting to fall back to something that we feel comfortable with. It's always comfortable to be with something that you like and that you're familiar with. And that's why we fall back, because we don't want to continue to grow, but we want to stay at where we are because we are comfortable with where we are. And that's the danger. So like meditation, meditative bliss, you enter the meditative bliss and you feel comfortable. You don't want that to ever change. And so you have rejected the laws of impermanence. And therefore, you have turned your cheek the other way, away from the truth. And that's when we will fall back. When you have that, you will fall back. That's when you fall back, is you don't stop seeing the truth, right? So, and it takes wisdom to recognize that. So when we meditate, we don't just meditate on meditative bliss, but we meditate to uncover wisdom, to see it more thoroughly. Okay? When we focus, we want to see it more thoroughly. So what can we do to achieve a state of non-regression? How do we enter the state of non-regression? There's a few things that we can do. One is, first, we have to enter the stream of the Dhamma. And by that, we have to first see the stream. If you want to enter it, you first have to see the stream. And then you start dipping in the stream. And then you plunge in the stream. And then the next step is to abandon yourself to the stream, to let go of your ego. So let's take step by step of how to achieve that. So here, the author is comparing the Dhamma to the stream. So why that's the case? Well, because in this analogy, the stream has a source, right? If water comes from a source, so for us, the Dhamma here also has a source. And the source is the Buddha. And the source of the Dhamma comes from compassion, great compassion, and great wisdom. So just like the stream coming from a source, the Dhamma also has a source. Right? It comes from great compassion and great wisdom. So the ultimate function of Buddha's infinite merits, virtues, and wisdom is to deliver all sentient beings from suffering. So we want to become a Buddha. That's what we will do, is to deliver all sentient beings from suffering. And it's not an easy task, and it takes a lot of courage, wisdom, and merits, and capabilities in order to do so. So that's why we have to prepare ourselves mentally, that when we say we want to become Buddhas, we have to prepare ourselves mentally that, yes, this is a worthwhile thing to do. And this bodhi, the bodhi, puti, bodhi, the bodhi is a state of highest moral and spiritual perfection. Right? It's the supreme prana, a wisdom, border, bhagnya, and it's unlimited compassion and loving kindness. And for us to achieve that, the first step we have to do is called Dhamma Diksha, which is Gui, where you go for refuge, where you accept refuge of the Buddha, of the Dhamma, and of the Sangha. So the Dhamma has a source, and that source is wisdom and compassion. Okay. The second is that the Dhamma is always progressing. And the reason that Dhamma resembles a stream is that it's always moving. It's not stagnant. When we want to reach Buddhahood, we cannot become stagnant. We cannot be stuck in any one level, but we have to continue to grow. Right? The stream continues to flow. Therefore, we will continue to grow. And grow where? Grow towards the directions of Nirvana, of Bodhi, Puti, Bodhi. Just like the stream flows towards the great ocean. When we are on this spiritual path, when we want to enter the stream of the Dhamma, we flow towards the directions of the Bodhi, right, Nirvana. Otherwise, it just becomes a swamp. If you have a stream that doesn't flow, it's just a swamp, right? It's just a pond, a swamp that doesn't go anywhere, a puddle. So because the Dhamma is always progressing, when we enter the stream, then we know that we are progressing in the direction of the Bodhi too. Meaning that if we are stuck at any location on a path, then we are not in the stream of the Dhamma. Does it make sense? If we are stuck, we are not in the stream of the Dhamma. It doesn't make sense, right? Okay. So as long as we are progressing, then we know we are in the stream of the Dhamma. That's how we know that we have met one of the criteria to be in the stream of the Dhamma. Otherwise, if we're standing still, then we are not really entering the stream of the Dhamma. And here, the water changes all the time. The river remains the same, but the water is always flowing, meaning that the Dhamma changes all the time is that we have different traditions, different ways of teaching, different schools. You have Zen, you have Tibetan Buddhism, right? Chanzong, Mizong, you have all kinds of schools. You have Tibetan Buddhism, you have Theravada, you have Mahayana. They're different flavors, but they have the same basic teachings. That's why the river is the same, because of the basic teaching. So that's another simile, PU, another example. Right? So the Dhamma is always progressing. We have to remind ourselves that if we want to enter the stream, we have to continue to progress. And third is that the Dhamma purifies it, just like the water purifying, washing away all the dirtiness. The Dhamma also cleans all of our afflictions and bad habits to help us to achieve, help us feel lighter and happier. And for us, in terms of in practice, then we are following the path of sila, samadhi, and prana, 三学, 戒定慧, right? Precepts, meditations, and wisdom. 也等对. Okay. So what does this mean to us, to Buddhist practice? How do we enter the stream of the Dhamma now that we recognize that we have to progress and all that? So on a more practical side, how do we enter it? Well, in order for us to enter it, we first have to see the stream. So life is like a desert where people are wandering aimlessly from one sand pile to the next. Just like sentient beings, they go up to heaven, down to hell. They continue to wander aimlessly without a home, without having a home, right? So for us, our life is like traveling in the desert without knowing where we're going to be going. Just like our lives, we don't know how we came to this life, and we don't know where we're going to go. So that's aimless wandering, right? So just like aimlessly wandering in the desert. But then one day, our luck, we see from a distance a shining object, and it turns out to be a great river. So we start to see the water, right? And so that's the river of the Dhamma. And we start moving towards it. We think that it could satisfy our thirst because we're wandering aimlessly, we're thirsty, we're tired. We think that it could satisfy our thirst. We wander aimlessly wandering in the samsara, lunhui, in the samsara, and we're tired, we're suffering, and we think that the Dhamma can make us feel happier, like give us a resting place. So that's why we're approaching it. So we're approaching it thinking that it could help us. So how do we come to see the Dhamma? How do we recognize the Dhamma? Well, there are many ways. You can read a book about Buddhism. That's how you recognize the Dhamma. Or you attend lectures, or you talk to other Buddhists, and you engage in these discussions about the Dhamma, and that's how you recognize it, right? So that's one way. Okay. And for some people, because they after they've seen a beautiful statue, they cause rise to respect, and they want to study Buddhism, right? So for us, it's important to have this beautiful images of the Buddha in your shrine room if you have one at home, or Phó Thang, right? Phật đường, your chanting place, your shrine room. Make it adorn, make it beautiful, and that can help to soften our heart and be more receptive to the transcendental state of being. But there are people who are not interested in the river, and they don't want to be there. They like wandering in the desert, and they think that the river, water in the desert is just an illusion, a delusion. So they don't want to. There are people who don't want the water at all. So when that happens, when we want to approach the river, other people don't. When that happens, we have to move on, go in alone. We have to move towards the stream of the Dhamma alone, leaving behind our friends, family, and companions. Because we know that's what we want, we are approaching it, whether with or without them. So as we move towards the stream of the Dhamma, we see it more and more clearly of how beautiful it is. Right? We start to hear people playing in the water, the cries of the wild birds, the laughter of the people bathing, right? Playing, enjoying the water. And so we begin to move towards the water quickly, and we eventually reach the bank of the water. We get to this point. Not the water yet, but we get to the point. We see the water. We're now at the bank, on the bank, and we see the water. We haven't gotten into it yet. So that's seeing and recognizing the stream, right? We hear voices, we hear the water flowing, and now we're here. We actually see the water. And so, of course, when we get there, we start to dip ourselves, at least a toe, in the water to test it out. Just going a little way into the water and then quickly coming out again. We don't quite trust it yet. We're not fully committed yet. So we kind of touch it to feel the water and then quickly come back out. So at this stage, we are afraid of going too deeply into the stream, afraid of losing contact with the bank. So we just have a little dip and then come out again very quickly. So in other words, we practice the Dhamma just a little bit, and then we go back to the worldly life for a while. A few minutes in the water and a few hours on the bank, and we feel much better, safer that way. Then we may even go back to the desert to join the folks that we met before. And this is quite a dangerous thing to do because we may end up forgetting all about the river, and we think that it was just all a dream that we experienced with the water in the river. But if it doesn't happen, if we don't get lost in the desert and we don't forget about the stream of the Dhamma, then we start spending more and more time in the water. And we think that it isn't really so dangerous after all. And we start taking long dips, right? We start to enjoy the shallow water a little bit more. Here, the emphasis is that you start to feel comfortable with it, meaning your growth will have to be natural. If you want to maintain your growth, it has to be natural growth. If it's natural, then you cannot very easily fall back. So if you are more likely to be forced back if you are pushing and forcing yourself. If you're doing something that you don't like and you continue to push yourself, you are likely to fall back. If you grow in a natural opening up kind of way, you are much less likely to fall back because it's part of you. It's natural. You will not feel so foreign with that growth. Therefore, you will more likely to accept it. So our progression has to be a natural part of our life. Our Buddhist practice has to be part of our life. It is not just like a weekend activity. You come here, you live your spiritual life, and then you go after the weekend, you go back to the world and you become a worldly person, a completely worldly person, like going back to the desert. If we want growth to be natural, it has to be a full-time activity. We think about it all the time, right? It's always in our mind to do the right thing, to not fall back. And that's how you prevent yourself from falling back. So you think about it day and night. It's always on your mind. And therefore, the progression would not feel very, very foreign to you. Does it make sense? So that's dipping into the stream of the Dhamma, right? Willing to accept the Dhamma, the stream, and you're not afraid of going a little bit further out. That after you feel comfortable with dipping yourself, then you start plunging into the stream of the Dhamma. And then you jump right into the stream and forget about the bank. You just jump right in and allowing the water to cover you completely without having any contact with worldly things. Here it is meant to say worldly mental states. Doesn't mean that you ignore life, but the worldly things don't bother you anymore. The worldly things do not consume your mind. You know that there are worldly things, and you handle worldly things. You live in the world, but it does not consume you. It does not occupy your mind 100% of the time. In this case, none at all, if you're willing to plunge in. So we plunge into the Dhamma when we meditate deeply, or when we go to Dhamma Shibir, a Dhamma assembly, Fa Hui. So that's when we are willing to accept, right? When we are enjoying the Dhamma assembly and we take part in it, that's when we start to plunge in. Does it make sense? Right. So that's jumping into the stream of the Dhamma, letting yourself submerge in it. The fourth thing, the next level, we're not done yet. One more level is to abandon yourself to the stream. Now that you are swimming, there may be fear of, you're always looking back. But the fourth step is just to let go. Let go and not be afraid of losing your ego. Because in the previous stage, even though we are completely covered by water, we're swimming in it, and we're going further and further out, and the water becomes deeper and deeper, but there's still a fear of losing ourselves. So when this happens, we start getting near the very middle of the river, the deepest part of the river, and we start feeling the current of the river washing us side to side, right? As we swim, and it starts to pull us very strongly in the direction of the ocean, right? The stream is pulling us, and we're paddling, and it continues to pull us. This is a very strong current, and we feel afraid because we do not want to die. We do not want to let go of our ego, and so we resist the current. We swim backwards to resist, or swim to the side to quickly get to the bank, and we hold back, and we don't abandon ourselves to the stream, to the Dharma. After this has happened several times, then you start to lose the fear, right? You're willing and you're struggling, and that's normal to have this fear of letting go, and it's normal, but you're struggling and you know that you can do it, but because the current is so strong, you don't want to lose yourself and you resist. But after several times of doing that, you start to feel more comfortable and you resist less and less. Does it make sense? So that's very basic human psychology, is that you test it. As long as you don't give up. So the point here is that as long as you don't give up, even though you may be resisting the flow of the current, but you don't give up, therefore you will continue to flow along the stream towards the ocean. Does it make sense? Right? And it can be very fearful to know that you're about to fall into the big ocean. You don't know where it is. You're abandoning yourself to something that you don't know about. Therefore, it's very fearful, and it's understandable. But as long as you don't give up and we continue to flow along, then you will continue to flow towards the direction. As long as you don't jump off the river onto the bank and then run off, then you're no longer under the effect of the current of the river. But as long as you're in the river and you continue to flow, you may resist, and that's fine, but you continue to make progress. Does it make sense? Once we have reached the state of non-regression, there is no danger whatsoever of falling back. That's the beauty of this point that we have to try to achieve. We may allow the current to carry us away completely in the direction of the ocean. And when we enter this fourth stage, we abandon ourselves to the stream of the Dhamma. And there is now no danger of us spending too much time on the bank or going back to the desert. Once we have allowed ourselves to abandon the ego, to accept the stream, we can go back to the bank or even go back into the desert, and there's no danger of losing ourselves. We can always find ourselves back to the river, to the stream of the Dhamma. We will never forget about it. So that's the point of no return, is that you will never be unskillful. You will never allow the world to occupy your mind, but you have control of it. You can still live in the world, but you have control of it. The world does not control or occupy your mind. And surely we will reach the ocean one day. Surely we will reach Nirvana. Surely we'll reach a Buddhahood, because we have reached the point of no return. Does it make sense? The stage of abandoning oneself to the stream of the Dhamma is simply called stream entry. That's one way of saying, of seeing it. Stream entry is that you need to abandon yourself to the stream first to call yourself stream entrant. Right? First, we see the stream, and then we dip in the stream to enjoy a little bit. And third is that we start swimming in it, submerging in it. Right? Fourth is that we are finally comfortable with it, and we can abandon ourselves to the stream. So the stream entrant cannot fall back into the lower states of existence, just like your questions. The lower state of existence, san er dao, right? They can never fall back to the lower state of existence. They can only make progress. Just like the water flowing towards the ocean, it continues to flow Once we reach that point, we will continue to make progress. And he can never forsake the Dharma. He will never give up on the Dharma. He will never forget about the Dharma because he has become the Dharma. It is one with the Dharma. So the Dharma has become him. He has become the Dharma, meaning that we live a life according to the Dharma. There is no distinction that when we are no longer part-time Buddhists, we live in the world with Dharma in the mind, meaning we act skillfully, and our mind is always towards the directions of the ocean, towards Nirvana or towards Sukhavati. Even though we live here, we may be sitting in one place, but our mind is always progressing towards directions of Sukhavati. Does it make sense? So that's how we know we're progressing. That's how we know that we're in the stream of the Dharma, because we're always progressing. The body may be sitting still, but the mind is always moving towards Sukhavati. Only the stream entrance is the real Buddhist. Of course, stream entrance and all above that are real Buddhists. And of course, this requires that we go for refuge. We have to go for refuge for the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Right? All Buddhas should therefore aim at abandoning themselves to the stream of the Dharma. They shouldn't be just satisfied with dipping in it, even plunge into it, but to let go. So they should be satisfied only when they abandon themselves to the Dharma, the stream of the Dharma. Right? Just let go and enjoy the stream, enjoy the Dharma, enjoy the water without fear of losing oneself. Does it make sense? I thought I included these pictures. They're cute, little puppies, to get your attention. But what is it that prevents us from doing this, from committing, from enjoying, from abandoning ourselves to the stream of the Dharma? What is it that makes us pull back, make us hold back? Well, one is prevented from abandoning oneself to the stream because of the three fetters. We kind of talked about this last time, but I will approach it from a different perspective, more practical. Of course, the three fetters are self-view, 身见, doubt, 疑, 怀疑的疑, and 疑. And the third is dependence on moral and religious rules, meaning that we take those rules, those religious observances, as ends in themselves and not means to the ends. So the first is called wrong view about the self, where we see the self as permanent and changing. And the other is, the second fetter is doubt. There is uncertainty, indecision, inability to make up one's mind, even unwillingness to make up one's mind about the Dharma. There are people who are very comfortable with harboring doubt because this way they don't have to make a decision. This way they feel like they don't owe anybody a decision because they have doubt. They feel happy living in doubt. They don't want to get out of it. The third is reliance on moral rules, religious observances, to help one gain salvation without developing the corresponding mental qualities and attitudes. This means that the practice becomes very mechanical. There's no thinking. You just follow, and you take that as the end in itself. So why do these fetters hold us back? And what can we do to abandon oneself to the stream? What can we do to abandon ourselves to the stream of the Dharma? So first, about the first fetter, we have to understand this a little bit more, is that a simile is that this rope, you have this rope tied to the bank, right? And then you are yourself holding onto this rope. You're not letting yourself go. You believe that this rope can help you, can save you, can make you feel safe. So just like this body, we feel that we ourselves are real and permanent, and we depend on this body to give us happiness. And therefore, we hold on to this body, this life, securely and not letting go. Just like we're holding to this rope and not letting it go, right? So that's self-view, 身见, 藤经, is that we hold on to this body very tightly. We think it's real. So holding on one end of the rope, we go out to the middle of the river where we feel the current pulling us very strongly. Even though we feel the current, but we still are not willing to let go. So we may be practicing Buddhism, we may be going to Dhamma assembly, attending lectures, meditating, but then we're not really letting go. Does it make sense? Because we still hold on to this rope, this life very preciously. So the second is doubt. The second fetter is doubt. And we're wondering whether to let go or not of this rope. We know that it's good to let go, but we're not willing to let go. So sometimes we think we should, sometimes we think we shouldn't. Sometimes we think it's good to let go, and sometimes we think it's bad to let go. It's a bad thing to let go. Even a dangerous thing to let go of the rope. And we can't decide, we're stuck. And that prevents us from abandoning ourselves to the stream. Right, so that's when we have doubt, that's how it feels like, that we can't decide whether to let go of that rope, to abandon ourselves to go into the stream or not. That's what it feels like. The third fetter is that we just go through this motion, mechanical motions of letting go. We struggle, we wave our hands, and we pretend to let go, but we're not really letting go. We go through the motions, but we're not really letting go. We pretend that we're trying very hard to let go, but in actuality, we're not trying at all, right? So this prevents us from abandoning ourselves, right? So this cute little puppy is ready to go somewhere, right? Really ready to serve, but he's not really going anywhere, right? And the water is very shallow. It's not very deep. He's just dipping in the water couple inches, not very deep. But he looks like he's going somewhere. He's going to go far. He's going to swim very deeply, but he's not going anywhere in actuality. So that's the third fetter. That's why it prevents us from letting go, entering the stream. So now the question is that, what sort of Buddhists are we? We should ask ourselves, right? Are we going through the motions? Are we seeing the stream? We have seen the stream. And are we dipping in the stream? We're dipping in the stream. Are we swimming in the stream? We enjoy the lectures. We enjoy the Dhamma assembly or the Dhamma activities. And are we plunging in? And are we abandoning ourselves entirely? So we should ask ourselves that, where are we along that stage? So nowadays, it's not difficult to see the stream everywhere, right? On YouTube, everywhere you go, you see the stream, you see the Dhamma. And dipping oneself in the stream of the Dhamma is a little more difficult. Some people never get as far as that, even though they have seen the stream, right? They're not interested. They've seen the river, but they have no interest in stepping in. And I'm not talking about worldly people, but even Buddhists who have been Buddhists for years, 5 years, 10 years, even decades. They have not really dipped in the stream. They just sit on a bank. They admire such a beautiful river, right? They recognize it's a beautiful river, but they have never taken a dip in it. They're just observing it, right? And they can tell you everything about the river. They have written books about it. They can tell you how long, how wide, how deep the water is, how broad. And they can tell you instructions of how to get from one shore to the other. But they themselves have never dipped into it. The certificate may have been given by someone who has not dipped into it either. So they follow somebody who may have not even dipped in the water. And so it is easy to see the Dhamma, but it's difficult to enter the Dhamma, right? Plunging into the stream is even more difficult, but it's certainly not impossible, right? To enjoy the Dhamma, to live the Dhamma 24/7, just enjoy it, is not impossible. So what's the best way of doing this? How do we enter the stream and enjoy the stream and abandoning ourselves? Well, one is to start going on a Dhamma assembly, towards Dhamma assembly, Dhamma activities, and to make an effort to commit to it. To make an effort maybe for a duration of, 3 months, 5 months, just make an effort to go there on a regular basis, to participate on a regular basis. And you will feel more comfortable. In other words, for the period of 3 months or 5 months, you schedule everything around it. You make that your priority. And when you make that priority, it will become natural to you. You will get used to it. And everything will flow according to, to that Dhamma assembly, your activities. So we think about the Dhamma, we talk about the Dhamma, we eat the Dhamma, we drink the Dhamma. Everything we do is about the Dhamma. You think about it, you sleep on it, and you talk about it, right? The Dhamma is for all. Buddhism is for all. The stream of the Dhamma is a stream of compassion, loving kindness, a stream of wisdom. So it's not impossible, right? We all can achieve the state of non-regression. And the Dhamma has its source, the Buddha, while its goal is the ocean of Nirvana, right? Nirvana, not self-emancipation, but the Nirvana for all sentient beings. So, okay. Let me... There is no lasting progress unless threefold purification of the body, speech, and mind, meaning that we have to get back to basic. If you want to make progress, you got to have that strong foundation. We have to observe the precepts, and we have to put in the effort to practice meditations, chanting, mindfulness of the Buddha and whatnot, because without that strong foundation, one cannot go very high without falling over. And so we have to practice observing the precepts. So why do people fail? Rama, which was a guru, he offered 2 reasons why people fail. When people ask him, how to make progress and how to maintain it and why do people fail, he said, one reason that people fail is because they have no clear idea of the goal they wish to reach. They just follow through emotion. They don't know the goal, and so they can get sidetracked, right? They get distracted, and they forget about the goal. So, why do we want to migrate to Sukhavati, Jila Sijie, the Pure Land, Amitabha's Pure Land? We should understand that clearly. Well, because we want to achieve enlightenment quickly to help all sentient beings, to uplift our value, our potential to help others, right? And the second reason why people fail, he said, was because they had no clear idea of how to get there. One is they don't know how to get, not knowing of their goal, the destination, and not know how to get there. Of course, they're not going to get there, right? If you don't know how to get there, you're not going to get there. So for us, we cause rise to joyful faith to Amitabha. And but this joyful faith has to be substantiated with good roots, merits, and conditions. 善根福德因缘, right? 田耕福德因缘. It cannot be empty words, but this joy has to be substantiated by action, by our good roots, by our merits, and by the conditions, good conditions. And in other words, we turn this ideal into our life. We live this ideal, okay? So if we want to make progress, you cannot just be happy-go-lucky, because there's a danger of allowing ourselves to drift aimlessly. But if we want to continue to make progress, there is importance of enthusiasm. We need to have that enthusiasm. And because the lack of enthusiasm will make the mind and body diseased. No enthusiasm, life becomes drudgery, a mere burden to be dragged. Nothing can be achieved if there is no enthusiasm. If we don't have enthusiasm in our practice, we're not going to go very far. So one way, the main reason for this lack of enthusiasm is that one has lost hope to get the opportunity to elevate himself or herself. Hopelessness leads to lack of enthusiasm. The mind in such cases becomes diseased. Right? So that's the importance of merit cultivation, 修福, 杜福. It elevates our value. We see our value, and our heart will be filled with joy and aspiration. I mean, if you wake up one day and you feel inspired to do something, it's going to be a great day. If you wake up one day and you feel tired, stagnant, then it's not going to be a very good day. It's not going to be very motivating. So how do we do that? Well, by practicing Buddhism and by practicing meditation and cultivate merits to have value in our life, we will have aspirations, we have enthusiasm. Because meditation is very positive, emotional positivity. We cause rise to compassion, loving kindness. Those things are very positive. If you add it with like merits, it will increase your life's value, right? That's why that's a really good source for enthusiasm, aspiration. Okay, so let's summarize what we just talked about. So we talked about the importance between non-progressions, right, from different stages. And the reason it's important because diligence, even if we don't achieve the state of non-retrogrogression, we can fall back even with diligence. And we should have bodhisattvas are irreversible because they have non-dualistic thinking. And with non-duality, what that means is that while we vow for rebirth in Sukhavati for the sake of all sentient beings, at the same time we are trying our best to make this place a better place for all sentient beings. We should have a clear goal of a migration to Sukhavati, and we should have a clear method of getting there. Avoid the danger of drifting aimlessly. And eliminate the ego. Allow ourselves to abandon the ego into the stream. And one way of doing that is, the basic way is to eliminate three fetters, right? Eliminate the self-view, avoid seeing our individual existence as irreducible and ultimate. Second is to eliminate doubt, avoid indecision to settle down and to overcome fear. And the third is to eliminate dependence on moral rules and religious observances. This will help us to avoid mechanical practices and take them as ends in themselves. So we have a clear understanding of a goal, and we have a clear path of how to get there. And it's just not that we're aimlessly wandering, right? So we see the Dhamma, we feel the water of the Dhamma, we dip in it. Now we start to swim in it, we enjoy the Dhamma. And the fourth is that we should try our best to let go, abandon the ego, to overcome fear. So this way, we will reach a point of no return. Right? Does it make sense? Any comments, questions?
There's a fourth feather.
Yeah.
Laziness.
These are the basic three that one has to overcome according to tradition in order to achieve a state of no return. There's 10 of them. Yeah, but I'm focusing only on the first three. Otherwise, we can go on and on. Okay. All right. Let's do merit dedication. Any other comments, questions? Okay, if you could please join your palms together, we recite. May the merits and virtues accrue today adorn the Buddha Pure Lands. repay 4 types of kindness above, and aid those suffering in the paths below. May those who see and hear of this bring forth the resolve for the Bodhi mind. When this retribution body is complete, together we shall meet in the land of ultimate bliss.